Each life we incarnate into has a divine purpose. For the majority of people on this planet, their purpose has eluded them. We have become so distracted with the struggle to survive that we have forgotten what we are here to do. In alignment with the sacred laws of nature, the ultimate purpose of all existence is to create and evolve. We certainly do not incarnate into life with the intention to destroy. And yet, we have come to live in a very destructive world. As a result, there are many out there who feel lost or adrift, whilst knowing deep down inside that something is very wrong with their reality. Many people wish they could do something of value, anything that is purposeful, instead of having to submit to a system of slavery in order to survive. It is important never to let go of that feeling. That is your soul crying out to you, telling you that your life has value and that you do indeed have a purpose. The most important thing you can do in life is to recognize your purpose, and often that requires a lot of soul searching. Life indeed dishes out some pretty tough challenges, which will either move you closer towards your purpose path, or will give you great training for when you finally realize what it is that you came here to do. But more often than not, the very clues about your life's purpose are hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of our existence. But we are so easily distracted by irrelevant details that don't really matter, that often we miss the very obvious right in front of us. It is because of our willful ignorance of anything that does not fit our preconceived ideas that the truth about the nature of our reality is so readily hidden in plain sight. This is a very deep and personal journey, which has come to be expressed in many aspects throughout my life. This is not just an attempt to retell a bunch of research and pass it off as my own, for I am very grateful and openly acknowledge all the many wonderful people that I have been given the opportunity to work with and to learn from in order to get to the point where I've come to know what I now know. This is a journey I was always destined to go on, and likewise, how I have come to know this information forms as much a part of the story as the information itself.
One, your life.
Hello, good evening, everybody. If you are now watching Conscious Consumer Network's live stream, it means you are tuned into Dragonology. My name is Mel Ve, and it is Thursday night, the 30th of April, 2015, and this is episode 6 of Dragonology. So it'll be around 9 p.m. London time and Morocco time, 10 p.m. here where I am in Central Europe, and of course my home country of South Africa, 4 p.m. in New York, and it'll be the next morning in Sydney, Friday morning, 6 a.m. So if you have tuned in from Sydney, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope to make this an interesting episode, so it's been worth your while to get up early. Just covering off from where we kind of have been meandering along for the last couple of weeks, which is around the roots of culture And we've covered this off in many different aspects. And for those of you who perhaps have not had the chance to see the first 5 episodes of Dragonology, do go back and check it out and have a look at sort of how we've built up the layers of knowledge over the week, because it certainly will help you have a greater understanding if this is your first time into this material, or certainly going forward for tonight's material. It would certainly help you have a much vaster, multi-layered understanding of what it is you're trying to portray. Otherwise, much of it actually might go over your head. But what I always try to do with every episode is keep it all-encompassing, so that if you're coming into this for the first time, you can kind of just dive straight in. And as always, we're going to take a very, very direct route into the heart of matters this evening. So let's have a look exactly at the whole cultural paradigm. And we've been talking about culture in the form of the arts, and we've covered off various aspects such as sports, theatre, Hollywood, music industry, all over the past few weeks. But when we talk about the cultural paradigm on a more broad scale, far-reaching scale, we're actually looking at several things apart from just the usual things we'd relegate under culture. We look at stories and symbols, which of course we've covered off in great detail in the last few weeks, how stories and symbols, all mask the existence of the dragon. Organizational structures and power structures, of course, inextricably linked. Control systems are related to the cultural paradigm, routines and ritual. Okay, and processes, the way we process things, and the processes that are set up for us in order to control us. And this all fits into the cultural paradigm. And by the end of this, like with every Dragonology episode we do, we come around full circle to the whole control, organization, and power structures within the cultural paradigm. And tonight we look at the one aspect of the control structure which seems to be pervasive throughout every single culture across the planet throughout history. And we can track that through our cultural mythology. As always, when we talk about culture, we talk about culture, and highlighted in red as always, because we are quite literally referencing ritual, cult-like behavior when you talk about culture, as we've covered this off in previous Dragonology episodes. So cultural mythology renders forth many variations of gods, creatures, and beasts that by present-day standards are largely relegated to the realms of religious doctrine or semi-dismissive mythology. Now, mythology has become semi-dismissive, but so has religion. Under the scientific paradigm, or specifically in our circles of educated or, grounded people, I wouldn't even need to say spiritual or evolved, but just anyone with a little bit of logic, has pretty much also relegated religion to sort of semi-dismissive mythology. So no disrespect to anybody who follows any form of belief. Everyone is entitled to their own free will and their own choices. But I'm only describing how it's kind of been labeled in modern terms by a great majority of people. Let's face it, the churches certainly don't pack the houses like they used to. There are more people nowadays who don't go to church than do. So the question beckons, did any of these beings actually exist when we were talking about gods, creatures, and beasts, that is? Did any of them actually really exist? Religion, as we say, relegated to semi-dismissive mythology realms. So we hear a lot about God and gods, and then, of course, various creatures and beasts. And to be honest with you, the whole point of what we do here with Dragonology is try to tie them all together in their various patterns to show you where they're fitting in, the similarities between the various cultures and these various beings, which, there's a lot of similarities between them, as we shall point out. So, since there were so many similarities, did these creatures really exist? Okay, and do they still exist? And if so, in what capacity? And what does that mean for humanity? Are they interacting with us, or are they watching from afar? Are they perhaps controlling us? Are they manipulating us to gather our energy? Lots of questions there. Now, don't forget, the Encyclopedia of Mythology quite clearly states it is the things that people find important which find place in their mythology. So, again, mythology should never be relegated to the realms of being semi-dismissive. There is a lot of truth hidden behind, actually not very much at all. And this is the thing, is when you start to break down the concept of labels and the ideas and concepts behind certain words that we've been taught, we actually begin to look at things for what they are as opposed to how we've been taught to interpret them, and very much been misled in a lot of ways. You know, when we start to actually just look at things for what they are, it's very obviously in front of us. It doesn't even take a hell of a lot of interpretation. And what makes it so interesting is that the symbols and allegories are so pervasive and so repetitive and so universal throughout all histories, throughout all cultures, throughout all mythologies, throughout all dragonologies, that it actually cannot be ignored. You know, to ignore them would just be to be quite simply ignorant of the facts and the obvious that lies before us. So as always, the aim with what we're doing is to prove that all comes from the dragon. The dragon is the root of all. To prove that many of the gods, creatures, and beasts of religion and mythology are in fact symbolic representations of the dragon. Now, we use the word dragon because I think it's probably the word that most people can identify with. They've got an understanding of what these things are. And I really, if you have not been through the previous dragonologies, please do go through them. We've gone through in quite specific point, you know, the individual representations from different genres, but as well as the symbolism and the common occurrences, which very much relegate these creatures to specific themes. And that makes them, that's very easy to point out, even when they're hidden behind their varying symbolic allegories. One of the ways, of course, to decode these symbolic allegories is to look at the etymology that accompanies all words, really. And specifically, the English language is a accumulation of, I'd say, many different languages, but largely rooted in the Latin language. And what we do when you start to decode the English language is you start to find that a great deal of it actually has what we call serpent root words or dragon root words. And pardon me for those who have been through this already, but just for recap and just for understanding, so for those who perhaps have forgotten, we'll go through some of the basic core key etymological points that are key to kind of fundamentally conscientize so that you understand what we're talking about when we make certain references whilst going through this material. Okay, starting, I beg your pardon, from the top. Or, okay, the OR root is one of the most common roots. We've gone through this in many words, many descriptions, and it comes up again and again and again. So the OR root, or. And then obviously that follows on into orf. An example of this would be the word metamorphosis. OPHI, ophi, and obviously the I and the E transliterates, and then the I and the E and the Y transliterates. Vowel sounds normally do transliterate with each other. Okay, so the ophi root, as in Ophiuchus, which would be the constellation of the serpent bearer. And then the, T-H-E, which then goes into things like theology as a word, for example. And theoi would be the, what's the word? I've forgotten it. Singular and plural, that's it. So the would be singular and theoi would be the plural. And the means God. Theoi means gods, as in gods of the pantheon. Phanes, of course, a god from ancient Greek, and Phanes very much is similar to Mithra. and we've gone through the previous Dragonology episodes, but from phanes you get the word pane, like window pane, I beg your pardon, window pane. You get the word fae, which is another word of fae is fairy, and of course phantom. And then you get a combination of the word feign and the, and that's theophany, which means the appearance or disappearance of God or gods. Then you get one of my favorite roots, which is the kolo, kolu, kula root. And kolo, kolu, kulu, kula, kali would be the root that is prevalent in words such as column, as in pillars and columns, and Dracula. And then, of course, the word dragon, you get the word gone, go, ghost, and host. And then, of course, the what we call shortening of words from the expression, which very much refers to the quality of light or illumination, which would be the Hebrew El, the Arabic Al, Al, and the Latin Il. So Elohim, Allah, and Illuminati would be the three examples of that. And then, of course, we got the jinn, which is initially spelled with a DJ, giving us the j sound, represented as the resting cobra in Egyptian hieroglyphics. That goes on to jinn with a J, and of course jinn with a G, and that goes on to gene, genesis, and origin. And origin obviously has the or root word and the jinn, so it's a double serpent root word. Those are very important. When you've got a double serpent root word, you've always got to take double notice of what it's trying to tell you. Okay. Just for a bit of revision, and for those who may not be aware, I hope that's a bit useful for what we're going to go through next. Okay, as we said, we're going to be starting with God's creatures and beasts, and we covered some of the stuff last week, but one of the most common gods and creatures and beasts is the winged serpent representation, which turns up in a lot of ancient cultural, pre-Christian, pre-Islamic mythology, and this of course is Egyptian papyrus. And here you notice the winged serpent with a plume or something on its head and an offering being made to it, worship of this winged serpent. So this is some kind of god, this is some kind of offering, normally a heart. This is what's kept in these vessels. Now, among the heavenly realms are, of course, the angels, and the El referencing that quality of light that we spoke about, and obviously being the root of Elo and Elohim. Ange being the root, the A-N-G being the root of Anguiem and Angui, which is the Latin word for dragon. And then the seraphims is just another classification of angels. But what's interesting to note here is you have the Ophi root word, except the O is transliterated for the A. So this would be A-P-H-I. Normally the O-P-H-I is an Ophi would be here. But you can say seraphim, and it's still the same sound, seraphim. And whether that's an O or an A, that is meant to represent a serpent root over there. And this one, you may notice, the seraphim are often depicted with 6 wings and with eyes in the wings, indicative of the biblical watchers. Here's where it gets a little funky, because some of you may love the look of cherubs. In fact, I've got a beautiful trio set of cherubs, which I've carried around me for years, which I painted. And I used to be obsessed with cherubs as a little one. Always putting wings on my back to look like a cherub with my curly blonde hair. But cherubs aren't as cute as may necessarily be thought, because they're anything but little winged flying babies with sweet little halos. They're actually representative of the dragon. And this is how pernicious the symbolism is that they actually will go and hide themselves behind innocent veneer or a pseudo veneer of respectability, such as, a hospital. This kind of theming is, very obvious, as they go for the least suspecting facade, but leave just enough of a head behind in the form of a halo and a wings for you to know that they're not quite human. Another word for cherub is puti, which is the plural of puto, which obviously would have an O. Puto is singular, puti is the plural, and this obviously references a little childlike cherub angel type being. And of course, carrying the bow. And the word arch and archer is also rooted in serpentine etymology. As we say, archon, like an archer or arch. Again, 9 archons of Greece. Again, referring to these serpent-like dragon beings that are the gods. Ifrit, the root word of rite and ritual. Ifrit refers to a malevolent demon or dragon-like being. You can see they've got horns here, horns on these beings, but very interesting to note is serpents always normally turn up in these depictions, and there's the serpents going around a tree. They love trees. One of the most common themes with regards to serpents is trees. I reference the Garden of Eden. Notice black and white, okay? Light and dark, dualism. Very, very common in when you're talking about these dragon-like beings. And of course, able to interact physically with beings and also be phantom and spirit-like. And of course, we spoke about the jinn, also depicted in Arabic art with wings and horns. All the same sort of themes going on here. This looks like the human sacrifice going on. More depictions of jinn. Again, notice the snakes, always with the snakes, horns and wings. And this is Muhammad actually fighting the jinn. And we often talk about the holy people being wreathed in a halo. In Arabic art, it actually looks more like, instead of being sun rays, it comes out looking more like a halo of fire. And then the jinn evolved into what became the genie of the lamp. Again, notice, what do you get from lamp? You get light. Again, that light symbolism, illumination, Illuminati, Elo, El, angel, halo, light, sun. It's all the same sort of allegory going on. And of course, how they're able to materialize, theophany, out of nowhere, out of seemingly nowhere, and disappear. Pierre, obviously, pure, parla, that's a root word we've spoken about before. So just 2 different depictions of genies. And then, of course, the most commonly referenced and known one, which is, of course, the one which appeared in Aladdin, the Disney depiction. And we'll go into some of the Disney allegory because we covered some of this off last week when we started climbing into how prevalent dragon symbolism and allegory is within Disney, but when you actually start to look at how much of it is referenced and is actually hidden symbolism of the dragon, well, you've got to wonder really what Disney's all about. A little bit of research will give you a clear indication, though. Okay, the basilisk. We've covered this off a lot. The basilisk, obviously similar to the word basileus, which is a Greek and Latin word for king, and of course very similar to the word obelisk, which you'll normally find outside places like St. Paul's Cathedral in the heart of the Vatican, in London, and as well in Washington, D.C., the 3 empire city-states. The basilisk here depicted with a crown, and usually sometimes also depicted with bird-like features. And there is a huge connection between the bird and the dragon. And this is demonstrated in the words colubra and columba, which columba references the dove and colubra references the serpent. And etymologically find their root in the kolu root. But they are playoffs against each other, masking each other. So this is why you have a lot of bird-like features turning up in depictions of the dragons. Particularly basilisks tend to take on the features of cockatrices. Again, notice sun and moon dualism. Always find the sun and moon turning up with the dragons. And of course, dragon slaying goes on so often when we check through cultural mythology. And of course, the basilisk is no exception. We find the basilisk being slayed in the seal of the city of Zwolle, and this is from 1295. And one of my favorite cities in Holland. As I said, I will do a whole program on the city of Zwolle one day because there's just so much dragonology material there.
But also very interesting, this one's in Munich, I think, and this is a Puto actually slaying a basilisk. You can see the cockatrice features here. So a baby sort of angel, a Puto, slaying the basilisk. And of course, this is the Basilisk of Basel, and Basel takes its name from basilisk. And in fact, there was a pope called Basil I and Basil II who bequeathed a basilisk to the Basilica of Saint Ambrosio, and that was in the year 1000 and something. But you know, it's not an accident that he did that, because he was Porphyro Gentius and born of the dragon bloodline, like most popes were and are. But again, notice the cockatrice features, a little bit of plumage on the head, the wings, with the shield and the spiral, because of course the word spiro or spiro means dragon. It's dragon etymology, and spirals are always indicative of the serpent or dragon. Two depictions of the basilisks of Basel. And the Leviathan, very commonly mentioned in the Bible. This is a Gustave Dior engraving of the destruction of the Leviathan, which is very commonly referenced and depicted as hellmouth in medieval Christian artwork. And I'll show you a few more depictions of this. Amazing depictions of hellmouth. In fact, just go Google it and you'll see the vast plethora of depictions of hellmouth. Very interesting. And then all this, of course, propaganda to breed fear into people. You know, this is the kind of artwork that was around then that people saw, and very much about mind control and fear, this kind of stuff. Okay. Fae and fairies. Of course, fae come from the root word of fanes, which is also the root of phantom. And you'll notice the fairies are normally always depicted as sweet, beautiful young ladies, or sometimes men as well, but with wings. And this one has a halo, solar halo. And from fairies, we go to vampires, and this is how contrasting the worlds of and contradicting the world of dragonology is. Because, yes, vampires from cultural mythologies are, in fact, dragons, as we've proven by the root of Dracula. And we'll get into that a bit more just now. The griffin is a common creature in Greek mythology, often depicted with the claws and fronts of an eagle, wings and head of an eagle, and the back of a lion. This is from a very good website, theoi.com, which is where you want to go if you want to track all the Greek gods. Highly recommend checking out theoi.com and spending a bit of time working through the mythology there. It's where I've got most of my knowledge from. But again, here we see the griffin with a sort of eagle, a very long-eared eagle. I don't see many eagles with such long ears, but it would be, yeah, lion body, eagle torso. And these griffins turn up in interesting places. Here you can see this would have been the entrance to the Babylon city gates. And you'll find these now in the Louvre. But this is found in ancient city of Knossos. And this is another griffin depiction. This is from around 650 BC. Now, sphinxes, no one guessed that sphinxes are dragons, and yet they're also one of the most common and iconic things of the ancient world that we come across. And of course, we have the Sphinx in Egypt, and they would have a royal pharaoh head on the Sphinx, very appropriately, because the royal bloodline is the dragon bloodline, and vice versa. So there's many depictions of sphinxes, not just this particular one in Egypt. We've got this depiction of Oedipus and the Sphinx. Interesting to note, this one has female sort of front torso crown there, yeah? And wings. And of course, here's another one. This is from a Greek crater from around the 1st century BC. And then we got the being known as a chimera, which, funny enough, in this particular depiction is depicted with a horse's body, human torso, and wings. But the story of the chimera in Greek mythology often has Bellerophon riding Pegasus, which is the winged horse. We will get onto Pegasus, because Pegasus is himself a representation of the dragon. Bellerophon killing the chimera, and this would be the chimera here. Okay, you can see the serpent, lower half. That's actually got the snake head on the tail part. With like a lion or cat-like countenance for the front half. But notice here, Bellerophon wearing the Phrygian cap that we spoke about last week. And another depiction of the chimera, sometimes also a little menacing, this one, but it would be a sort of lion's body with a head of, I don't know, a buck or a goat coming out of its back. Sort of like a mutant zoomorphic kind of effect. And Pegasus as well is a good example of zoomorphism of the dragon, where dragons take on animal-like countenances that are, there's something symbolic of them. It need only be one feature. In this case, it would be the wings. And ogre. Now, no one would have guessed that ogre actually comes from dragon, but ogre, you take the word the O-R root, okay? I know it's separated by a G, but you can find the serpent root in the word ogre, on the or root. And of course, that's Shrek. We'll get onto him later. But ogres are generally known to eat people and tear them apart and do all sorts of nasty things to them, generally bigger than, Homo sapien. And then orc, also serpent root etymology, and we know the orcs from Lord of the Rings. But orc actually is evolvement of Orcus, which was another creature of ancient mythology. And then we have harpies, and the word harp, which is often associated with angels, is also rooted in the root of harpies, which were known as winged or bird women, okay? Two depictures here, Harpica. This is also on Greek pottery, ancient Greek pottery, which has survived, depicting the harpies. The harpies here, this is a stone statue showing sort of the bird lower half, and some painting on the side of Greek pottery over here, harpies. And then moving on to mermaids. And again, we have spoken a bit about the mermaid theme when we covered off Melusine in some of our previous mythology, or Dragonology, I should say. John Waterhouse depiction of a mermaid, and of course, a depiction of Melusine. And mermaids turn up absolutely everywhere. This is the front of a French magazine, and in French, mermaids are actually known as les sirènes, and we will get onto sirens in a second. But Little Mermaid obviously originally came from the Hans Christian Andersen version of the story and has evolved into this lovely Disney version. And the name of the mermaid in the Disney version is Ariel. Notice the E-L. Very much for a reason as well. As I said, the sirens, les sirènes, is the French for mermaids. And there's interesting stories about sirens. Here we can see a little serpent on the top of the heads over here. Wings, and often depicted with the bull. Now, you'll notice Mithra is depicted a lot with the bull as well. Bull symbolism comes up quite a lot. But this is a picture called, if I remember correctly, I think it's Ulysses and the sirens. I should have actually written that one down, but it is actually taken from a painting, and it's a depiction of Greek mythology. And you notice these sort of like fish-like lower half there, but this one's kind of shaped out already. And then nymphs, sirens and nymphs are kind of relegated to the femme fatale, lure sailors and men in watery parts kind of thing. They kind of fit, and they're relegated to that sort of idea. These water sprites and nymphs. And then, of course, I didn't use the word sprite, but the word sprite actually comes from the word spiro and does kind of refer to water sprites or nymphs. The word muse, obviously we talk about the daughters of Zeus, who was the primary god of the Greek pantheon, has 9 daughters who are said to be muses. Typically we talk about music as the art of the muses. That is where the word music comes from. And the muses were meant to inspire people, and deals could be struck with muses, Faustian type pacts for fame, fortune, and to be inspired with talent that perhaps isn't natural. All right, now going into more specific gods and goddesses, the goddess Athena obviously gave the name to Athens, and the THE root is in Athena. Athena is also known, I'll go into other names, but you have a look over here, you'll see she wears a serpent cloak, and the sort of headdress that gave rise to the Roman soldiers wearing this kind of headdress, which is also rooted with the dragon, the plumage. Okay. And this is Athena with her cloak of serpents carved in stone, which is beautifully done. And this is the Athena shield, also depicted with a serpent, and a carving of Athena. You see serpents on the cloak as well as next to her. Lots of serpents. And interesting, the Athena coin depicts Athena again with the plumage on her head, but on the reverse side, on 2 different types of Athena coins, you'll notice the owl turns up, the owl symbolism. And the owl symbolism turns up with the goddess Minerva, who is another version of Athena. And you'll notice here, Minerva's shield has a being with serpent hair, very much like Medusa. Yeah. Here we've got another owl in a Minerva depiction. Now a Minerva over here wearing plumage on her head. And going to some other mother goddess figures here. This is the Babylonian mother goddess Ishtar, depicted with feet of an eagle or claws. But notice what is on the side. I beg your pardon, owls. And what have we got here? Lions, standing on lions with owls. And we've seen these creatures before. Notice the wings. Notice how she's holding, well, we can't really make out what that is, but that could be serpents, perhaps. Because if you look at this mother goddess figure, also standing holding serpents in her hand, these are definitely serpents. You can make those out, the head and the tail, okay, in the same way as this one. Again, with things on their head. This looks like horns going up into Phrygian cap shape. Can't quite make this out, but always some kind of headdress going on. And then into Roman Catholicism, the Virgin Mary, often depicted standing on a moon because she is in fact a moon goddess in her pantheistic incarnation. And look here, we normally always have a serpent grasping an apple. Now, apples and serpents, again, inextricably linked. We've been through this one before. Come back to the creational Genesis myth. And then here again, another serpent. This one, a couple of heads on it and some horns. But notice the moon again. And what have we got? The solar aureola, which goes around the entire body. So moon and sun, yet again. And this one, we've got a dove. Remember, the dove is also a serpent or dragon symbolism. So the moon goddess is normally referenced as the virgin, and virgin, the word virgin is rooted in the word viper. I beg your pardon, the word viper and virgin come from the same group of words, I should say. And normally the moon goddess is depicted as the mother goddess figure, often with a solar aureola, as you can see in several of these, and sometimes with a crown. Look at this massive crown. Sometimes stars in the crown as well, which is common with the Virgin Mother Goddess figure, particularly Europa, which is why you find in the European Union the circle of the stars. It's really depicting the crown of the Virgin Mother Goddess. Okay, moving to a different part of the world. Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand recognize the dragon female mother goddess as a Nagini. Okay, the Naga would be the male aspect and the Nagini is the female aspect. Here we go. You can see definitely female. You can see by the breasts, wings, and serpent lower half. You can't make this up. These things are from ancient history and they're just so prevalent and so common in the way they look with so many other parts of history. It's just phenomenal. You can't ignore the similarities. From a Naga temple, again, serpents, cobras on either side of the mother goddess. Yeah, serpents coming up from either side of the head. And in fact, the Hindus, you'll notice often they wear that dot on their forehead, the bindi. And that again is related to dragon worship, serpent worship. It's this dot again. Over there, the red dot is prevalent and used because of the serpent allegory. Hindu serpent goddesses, Manasa, and of course, this is Vishnu dancing on the head of the serpent, whilst the serpent's serpent wives all pray to Vishnu. Isn't that interesting? A big pun to Krishna. Now, we spoke about this in previous Dragonology episodes. The Gorgon Medusa is the symbol of Versace, but often represented with wings on the side of her head. Here you can see some wings over there on the temples and serpents for hair. But Medusa was a Gorgon, and this has the serpent root word O-R in it as well, and the G-O-N like dragon. And Lilith. Lilith was, again, Christian mythology, the creational myth of Genesis. And she is, like many of these depictions, wrapped with a serpent. And this is a carving in the, we've looked at this carving before, on a pillar in Notre Dame, and it shows a female aspect, most likely Lilith, of the serpent on the tree. Here's Doris. Doris is said to be the daughter of Phorcys, and we'll go into Phorcys in a second, but often riding the hippocanth, which is a horse with like a fish or serpent-like body, as you can see here, in little undulations and twists and turns of the lower half of the hippocanth. And this is Phorcys, and you see the O-R root again. Phorcys, primordial sea god, interesting, holding a torch for light once again. That's like some golden arcs of some sort. Interesting that. But here, Phorcys is depicted often like Phanes and Mithra in the cosmic circle, the cosmic egg, which often has the zodiacal depictions on it. And then Typhon, which was the most feared of all the Greek gods, said to be representative, cognitive with the Greek version of Satan or the devil. Here on a Greek pottery piece from the 1st century AD. And this, you can see the wings here, serpent lower half with the Phrygian cap, which we've discussed before. Interesting depictions here, serpent fingers, scaled twirly feet, and oh, harpies in the background. That's interesting. These harpies, bird women with sort of serpent-like tails. As we spoke about already, Phanes, also depicted wrapped in a serpent. We covered Phanes quite often, but with, look at the notice, the cloven hooves. born out of the cosmic egg, and also again surrounded in a zodiac depiction. Mithra, very much depicted similar to Phanes, got a lion-like face wrapped in a serpent, okay, and standing on a moon, a ball of some sort. Here's a few other depictions of Mithra that are sketches I just sort of pulled up, but they're pretty much all depicted the same. And Mithra was often depicted as Sol Invictus, or the unconquered sun, sometimes depicted with a lion's face, because the lion was in fact a representation of the sun. Quetzalcoatl, South American, Mesoamerican deity, often known as Voltan or Kukulkan. Notice in this depiction, which is a stone carving on the side of a temple, it's got the horns there with the plumage on coming out. And of course, we've seen Athena and various other depictions of this plumage, which turns up on Quetzalcoatl, which were turned up before the Roman period, interestingly enough. But here we go, the plumed serpent eating a human being. And of course, the god Saturn eating a human being. This theme comes up a lot. Human sacrifice and devouring and blood drinking and ritual are inextricably linked with dragons. And of course, since human sacrificing, ritual, and devouring are inextricably linked with dragons, so is rape and the taking and vampiring of anything. This is a picture of Jupiter raping Olympia by Giulio Romano, one of my favorite depictions, because here you actually can see Jupiter with a beautifully depicted tail half. And Jupiter's always depicted with eagles in the background. That's the symbol of Jupiter, is the eagle, which is why you have the Roman eagle turning up. Another depiction of Jupiter. Notice the lyra over here, the musical instrument, the harps, harpy, all music, muse, all that kind of symbolism turns up. Okay, then there were the Tritons. Notice the serpent lower half. Here we get into the aquatic sort of themed mermaid creatures. Again, look at the baby with the lower half of a serpent. Here's wings on this one. Okay, here's another Triton with a fork. And this is a nice big picture of variously depicted Tritons. Some of them I can't even make out. They look as if some of them are more like Siamese twins, but not quite human, not quite animal, not quite sea creature, but again, long, twisty, serpent-like tail aspect. Okay, moving over to India. Here we have Vishnu reclining on the multi-headed serpent, and this turns up quite a lot, these particular pictures, and sometimes depicted with a silver cord of himself floating outside himself, almost like he's left his body. And more of the Hindu gods with the serpent. And this is apparently a story of this deity of gods wanted to have children on earth and sought permission from Krishna, who's also multi-headed with a solar halo around him. Interesting. All right, Australia. The rainbow serpent of originally legend, supposedly the creator of our world as we know it, rainbow snake. Lots of interesting Dreamtime stories about rainbow snake, and you'll find it in old originally art in the caves, and they portray him quite often in modern day originally art, which is a lot of dot work and interesting bits. I have actually had the pleasure of seeing an original piece. So moving on to Disney now, lots of different dragon depictions. Dragons have been reinterpreted, redrawn, recharacterized, remythologized in so many different ways by Disney, but not just in literal dragon allegories. But if you actually start to go through them, and we are just the more obvious ones, of course, we've got the Little Mermaid. And for those of you who aren't aware, do check out the castle of the Little Mermaid, because there's a bright, shining penis in it. Yeah, don't know why they drew it like that, but there's a lot of sexual allegory with these things. And of course, the story of Shrek, we've already covered off the fact that ogre is in fact a reference to the dragon. But the story of Shrek also depicts a shape-shifting princess. Remember, Princess Fiona shapes from human to ogre shape and then back again. Okay, shape-shifting is very much a theme which is associated with dragons, as we've covered off. Another shape-shifting being that can sort of come out of spirit or nowhere, is the genie, which turns up in the stories of 1001 Nights, or Aladdin as represented here. And of course, we spoke about the lamp earlier, light, always light for these creatures. Another shape-shifting story, a princess kissing a frog who became a prince. The frog shapeshifts into a prince. A lot of this kind of allegory. And this, again, ties into the Cinderella theme of being of the right bloodline. They were obsessed with bloodlines, and they portrayed this over and over again in the themes within these stories. Peter Pan, very sweet. J.M. Barrie was a pedophile and absolutely obsessed with sort of cult ritual and kind of wrote Peter Pan as an allegory for this, allegory for mind control as well, sort of creating altars and going out of your body and all that kind of thing. But what's interesting is the sweet little guy, Peter Pan, is actually a depraved sex fiend in most sort of ancient mythologies. The word pantheism finds its root with the god Pan, which is most commonly depicted as often raping goats or seducing young boys. Interesting. And then, of course, Tinkerbell, which is an offshoot of the Peter Pan story within Disney. Tinkerbell actually forms a central feature because on Cinderella's castle, Tinkerbell's the one that sort of flies around it and swishes it with the magic dust in the Disney theme tracks and logos. So Tinkerbell's quite a central feature, and of course is a fairy. And Belle or Baal or Elle, notice that etymology in there. And of course Cinderella, Elle again, Elo being light, and the glass slipper, again, much like the Princess and the Frog, it's about the right bloodline to marry a royal, and glass is representative of the royal dragon bloodline. We covered this off in last week's Dragonology. Please go back and watch it if you haven't. It's very interesting. But Cinderella's castle is one of the central features of Walt Disney, and of course, Cinderella's of the right bloodline, the royal dragon bloodline, represented by the fact that her foot fitted the glass slipper. If the shoe fits, wear it. So if you're of the right bloodline, marry the prince. Now, the archetype of the fairy godmother is not really clearly understood and hasn't really been thoroughly explored, but very symbolic, because often when you have somebody, and this happens a lot within the royals, they will have a royal child. For example, Queen Elizabeth, supposedly the Virgin Queen. She wasn't the Virgin Queen. If you've seen the film Anonymous, or if you haven't, please do go see it. And it's portrayed in this film, not only that William Shakespeare didn't write all the plays that he wrote, it was in fact written by Dragon Bloodline Royal Edward de Vere, but Queen Elizabeth herself actually had a number of children. And what they do is they take these kids away and they place them in good homes and give them sort of good names and titles so that they might perhaps at a later stage take their place. Bill Clinton was supposedly an illegitimate Rothschild that was raised and made to seem like, just some random kid came out of Arkansas, became president. No, he's bloodline collected. And so it goes with these. They've got these kids that they put with other families, and a fairy godmother takes care of them. And this is actually a real thing that happens, and that they have a dragon spirit, demonic spirit, angelic spirit, whatever you want to call it, that watches over these or guides them from other realms, these sort of royal descendants that are put into other families. And this is what's happened with Cinderella, fairy godmother for Cinderella. Again, why Cinderella is so important? Because she was of the royal dragon bloodline. She had a watchful fairy godmother spirit that watched over her whole life until the right time when she had the foot ready to foot the slipper. I referenced the 3 fairy godmothers which turn up in the story of the Sleeping Beauty, which actually was reinterpreted very interestingly into a tale of Maleficent. Now, Mel, or M-E-L or M-A-L, means dark or black, as we've covered off in previous Dragonology episodes. But the tale of Maleficent tells the story of supposedly a dark queen with a good heart. So the black and white, the duality playing out here. But very much this is a fairy godmother. This is what Maleficent was, a fairy godmother to the Sleeping Beauty, or the princess who then pricked her finger on a spindle and fell asleep. So interesting. If you haven't gone and seen Maleficent, do check it out. A lot of interesting allegory in there. Lovely dark black horns on Angelina Jolie. Interesting character herself. And of course the Phantom, which comes from the root Phanes, and which has been incarnated into many modern day interpretations, such as the Marvel Comics Phantom, and of course the Phantom of the Opera. And as I said, we'd catch up on the genre of vampires, which by far is the most overdone, overinterpreted, overproduced genre of film. I mean, how many times can you play out a script about blood-sucking dead people, supposedly? Pardon me. Vampires just seem to be ever pervasive and ever popular themes. I don't think by popular demand. I think they're trying to tell us something, or they just love glorifying themselves in Hollywood. But yeah, there's just so many different genres of vampire film that I didn't get them all, but I've been through them all actually at one point, and I didn't put them all in here, but there is just never ending. And in fact, my favorite one is this Francis Ford Coppola version of Dracula. It'll always be my favorite vampire flick. But yeah, even the most recent Twilight series, another homage to the dragon or the vampire. Now, people will say, how can you link dragons and vampires? Well, for a start, Vlad Tepes, after whom Dracula was written, was in fact a member of the Order of the Dragon. But this book here, The Dragon Seed, written by Prince Nicholas de Vere von Drakenberg. Now remember, it was Edward de Vere who wrote all the works of William Shakespeare. I beg your pardon, I've skipped. This guy, Nicholas de Vere of the de Vere bloodline, over here, he wrote, you can see, he actually references the dragon seed as the holy grail descent of the House of Vere, vampire god kings, okay? So what we always thought of as the gods, okay, vampire god kings of Eurasia, okay? Extracts and observations concerning the fairy bloodlines of the House of Vere, Weir, and Collison, including dragon descent of Jesus Christ from Satan, the secret genealogy of an ancient lineage revealed. So really well worth checking this out. I've been reading bits and pieces from different websites and all over the show, but basically this tracks the Holy Grail descent of the House of Vere, vampire god kings of Eurasia, tracks fairy bloodlines, and the dragon descent of Jesus from Satan. So Satan is the forebearer or the antecedent of Jesus, or ancestor, I should say. Jesus is the antecedent of Satan. Now, that's something most people do not like to hear in Christianic circles. But, the dragon is most prevalent in things like artworks, sculptures, carvings, and these medieval bestiaries, which thoroughly and meticulously recorded the existence of dragons in various, here's a griffin, a dragon with, again, the face at the end of the tail. This is a representation of a dragon, though, but various depictions and various disguises and these medieval bestiaries shows us that these people were aware of these creatures and recording them. Because why? It's the things that people find important that find place in their mythology. And the mythology is recorded in art, architecture, sculpture, bestiaries, literature, books, papyrus. Some interesting depictions here. Fisca Curiosa, name of a series of books which depicted these beings which have obviously been depicted in various guises throughout history, shape-shifting beings, not anatomically accurate, but what they had gathered through myth and legend for themselves and then re-represented and reinterpreted them. It's interesting to see the re-representations of how people have interpreted these beings over time. And of course, you cannot talk about dragons and not get into the whole alchemy situation. Of course, Al is a dragon root word, but notice this. King and queen, lighter and dark wings, two different color wings. And what turns up here? We have dragons underneath them and the Holy Grail with serpents coming out of the cup. We've seen this before, haven't we? The serpent grail, the Holy Grail, the dragon bloodline. And here again, here's another depiction of this, holding a serpent on the side with a crown on his head, serpents coming out of the cup with crowns on their heads. This is a king and queen with the crowns on their heads, with wings on either side. Very interesting, that. And here's another alchemical or alchemy type depiction. A queen, king, double-headed eagle, and serpents knotting and twisting, and a sun and a moon. They always turn up as well. And of course, one of the most prevalent alchemical or dragon symbolic depictions is the Ouroboros with, as you can see, the serpent dragon root or root in there. And these are commonly depicted again, serpents in trees, dragons in trees, inextricably linked. And this is an Ouroboros, which has actually got a fox-like countenance. And the word fox is actually representative of the numbers 666. Now, when you start looking at the Ouroboros and where they turn up in some very interesting places, for example, in Yggdrasil, Yggdrasil, I should say, which is from Norse mythology, in the stories of Asgard and the Nine Realms. Look at this. This is this Ouroboros circling Yggdrasil, the tree of life. And here we go. Asgard, Midgard, Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life at the very top. And supposedly the Nine Realms, which, here we go. It's got a serpent holding on to them. Now, here's a serpent supposedly surrounding what could be Earth, flat Earth. This could be the Antarctic, which is potentially a circle of ice around us, as opposed to being a round globe or a ball. It could be flat, with the Antarctic being a circle of ice, surrounded by a serpent. Again, dragon with his claws holding onto the realms. What is that saying? It's saying a bit of control for me. And you see this theme coming up again and again in various dragon depictions of flat earthish type nature. Again, an Asian depiction, it's a pretty old one, dragon surrounding the earth, I beg your pardon. And here's one again, a Vedic depiction of what would look like an ogre or Ifrit kind of creature, serpent and dragons in the middle, but surrounding a flat earth type of picture. Yeah. Now, the themes pertaining to the dragons that we've covered off. Rulers, royalty, that they are in fact deities, and that they are in fact all three. Dragons are present in every religion, pagan, pantheistic, monotheistic. They're the root of our entire culture: music, sport, theatre, literature, fairy tale, you name it, we've covered that off. So if they are the root of our entire culture, they are our origins, which is why the creational myth falls into the book of Genesis, Gen or Jin, root word of the dragon. We covered off how they like to appear and disappear, incarnate and disincarnate, how to change shape, metamorphose. They are inextricably linked with the four elements. Let's explain. Obviously, we've covered their mermaid-like countenance, which would be the water. Dragons often are said to breathe fire, with wings so they could fly in the air, and of course, inextricably linked with the earth, with the trees, earth mother, mother goddess, and all that. But dragons are in fact the fifth element because they are in fact linked with spirit as well, being able to be physical form or spirit form, change shape. But also the root word spiro, which means dragon, is the root of the word spirit and spiral. So yes, dragons are the four elementals, but also the fifth element. And are they represented as gods and dragons, depicting elements of good and evil, light and dark, like the yin and yang. And the yin and yang symbol is actually a depiction of the dragon. And this is what's very interesting to note is that if you go back to the most ancient religions, like Egyptian religions, they actually very much believe in Gnostic dualism, and that light and dark both have its purpose. That the process of creation happens between 2 points. You can call those points yin and yang, light and dark, positive and negative. The negative and positive, or the, how do we say, active and passive generative principles of our universe, between which all points of creation takes place, because we are continually moving. You know, life is cyclical. We're always moving, passing from one part to another, one point to another, one point to another, and you're never standing still. And sometimes you're on an upslope, sometimes you're on a downslope, but all creation, all of our karmic evolution really happens between the creative points of the active and passive generative principles of life. So that is how the dualism plays into it. And dragons are very much representative of that spiritual aspect as well, which says a lot about them and beckons a lot of questions with regards to how much of our interwoven reality is not related to the dragon. It seems that absolutely everything is. It's our language, it's our art, it's our sculpture, it's our mythology, it's our fairy tales, it's our television, it's Disney, it's everything. So we're going to be covering off a bit more of this next week in Dragonology episode 7. We take a look at the control structure, who is who, and how it all connects into each other. And of course, that'll be happening on the 7th of May. As always, we are still trying to complete the Encyclopedia of Dragons. It just keeps growing, but we would really like to publish it. Anybody interested in submitting any material or get involved by supplying resources, printing resources of any kind, or your sacred labor to donate to the editing, or even perhaps want to help contribute to the cost of publishing the book, please do get involved. We are really keen to publish Dragonology, the Encyclopedia of Dragons. And of course, everything is now available in high definition downloads on CCN. So please do download a high definition copy of any of your favorite CCN shows from femarket.com, which goes live as of tomorrow. And of course, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign, which we're trying to get 300 people each to donate 10 euros a month. With this number of people, we'll be able to continue functioning beyond the end of May. Without it, we won't be able to continue CCN beyond the end of May. And what we're also hoping to do is launch the CCN World, which is the international language channel, which basically we'll have all the foreign language programs on one channel, and we'll have the English language channel as a separate channel. But we can only do that if we get the 300 pledges. So please, guys, the Pledge 300 campaign launches tomorrow. Become a regular pledger to CCN, only 10 euros a month, and you'll get unlimited access to the high-definition archive, the CCN HD archive, which is available on ethimarket.com. We have a back catalogue of over 250 shows, which is aired since we've launched CCN on the 1st of January 2015. So help support free and independent media by pledging to us or donating to us. And as always, we thank you for supporting free and independent media. That's it from me tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and please tune in next week for the next episode of Dragonology. Mel Ve, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential, with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform being made available to use at no cost to the broadcaster. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethimarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of 10 euros, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows, which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge 10 euros a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Without it, CCN will simply not be able to function without succumbing to corporate sponsorship and advertising. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.